On August 11, 2017, rescuers found the private submarine UC3 Nautilus sinking in Køge Bay, south of Copenhagen. Its owner, Peter Madsen, was pulled from the water. The journalist who had boarded with him the night before was gone. Madsen immediately gave police a simple explanation. He said he had dropped 30-year-old Swedish reporter Kim Wall safely near Refshaleøen at about 10:30 the previous night. No camera, witness, phone record, or message showed that she ever reached land. 10 days later, a cyclist found a woman's torso at the shoreline on southwestern Amager. The head, arms, and legs had been removed, and metal had been attached to keep the remains underwater. DNA confirmed the torso was Kim Wall. Her blood was also found inside the Nautilus. Madsen's first story was no longer doubtful. It was false. He then said a heavy hatch had fallen on Wall's head and killed her. When divers later recovered her head, doctors found no skull fracture that supported that account. Madsen changed his story again. He now claimed Wall had died from carbon monoxide inside the submarine while he stood on deck. He admitted dismembering her and throwing every part into the sea, but he still denied murder. This was not a man gradually remembering a traumatic accident. Each new version appeared after police found evidence that destroyed the previous one. Madsen was changing his story to fit whatever investigators had just recovered. The exact method used to kill Kim Wall was never established. But that uncertainty did not come from a weak investigation. Madsen had cut apart the body, weighted the remains, scattered them across the bay, and deliberately sunk the crime scene. The central question was therefore not whether police could identify the killer. It was whether a man could destroy the clearest evidence himself, then use the missing answers to create reasonable doubt. Kim Isabel Fredrika Wall was an independent Swedish journalist who reported on identity, gender, social justice, foreign policy, and communities that received little international attention. Her work appeared in publications including The Guardian, The New York Times, Vice, Time, Foreign Policy, The Atlantic, Harper's, and the South China Morning Post. She had reported from Sri Lanka, Haiti, Cuba, Uganda, the Marshall Islands, and other parts of the world. Her stories often focused on people living with the effects of conflict, political power, climate change, and economic pressure. Wall studied international relations at the London School of Economics. She later earned graduate degrees in journalism and international affairs from Columbia University. In 2016, her reporting on nuclear testing and climate change in the Marshall Islands received the Hansel Neath Prize. She had already built a serious international career before her name became connected to this murder. Friends and colleagues described her as curious, prepared, and determined to understand people on their own terms rather than reducing them to simple headlines. That background matters because Wall did not board the submarine for a thrill. She was doing her job. Peter Madsen was a public figure who had spent years inviting journalists, supporters, engineers, and filmmakers to look at his projects. Treating her decision as reckless would misunderstand both the assignment and the way Madsen presented himself. Wall had been working on a story about Denmark's amateur space movement. She had tried to interview Madsen, a self-taught inventor known for privately built submarines and plans for homemade rockets. On August 10th, Madsen finally responded and offered an interview that evening. He also invited her aboard the Nautilus for a short trip. The invitation came at short notice. Wall and her partner, Ole Stab, were with friends and preparing for a move. But Madsen was the source she had been trying to reach, and access to the submarine could strengthen the article. Accepting that interview was a normal professional decision. Madsen had a public reputation, a visible engineering project, and a history of speaking to the media. Wall had no reason to know he would turn the trip into a crime. Shortly after 7 that evening, she boarded the Nautilus near Refshaleøen. Witnesses saw her on the vessel, and photographs showed her standing near the tower as the submarine moved through Copenhagen's harbor. The Nautilus was about 18 meters long and had been built with private funding and volunteer labor. It was often described as one of the largest privately constructed submarines in the world. From the outside, it represented engineering ambition. Inside, it was a narrow metal vessel where one operator controlled the route, the engine, the ballast system, the hatch, and the decision to surface. Once the submarine left the harbor, Wall could not simply walk away from the interview. Madsen controlled where the vessel went and when it returned. That control later became central to the prosecution's case. The submarine was not just the place where the murder happened. It gave Madsen privacy, physical control, and time to destroy evidence before anyone could enter. Madsen had built a reputation as an inventor who ignored conventional limits. He had worked on submarines and helped establish Copenhagen Suborbitals, a volunteer rocket project. Former collaborators also described repeated conflicts and bitter splits. Those disagreements did not prove violence, but they showed that Madsen was used to controlling his projects and presenting himself as the person who could do what others thought impossible. His public image made the invitation look legitimate. The same image also gave him access to journalists and supporters who believed they were meeting an unusual engineer, not entering a situation he had prepared for violence. Madsen had been photographed, interviewed, filmed, and supported by people who saw the Nautilus as an engineering achievement. That history lowered the sense of danger around him. The trip was expected to last only a few hours. When Wall did not return and could not be reached, Staab contacted people who might know the submarine's location. At 3:39 on the morning of August 11th, Denmark's Rescue Coordination Center received a report about a possible maritime accident. The Nautilus had not returned, and both people believed to be aboard were missing. Aircraft and vessels searched the waters south of Copenhagen. At about 10:30, rescuers established visual and radio contact with the submarine near Drogden Lighthouse. Madsen said he was heading toward harbor. Shortly before 11, the Nautilus suddenly sank. Madsen entered the water and was rescued by a private motorboat. Kim Wall was not with him. He claimed he had placed her ashore near a restaurant at Refshaleøen around 10:30 the previous night. That claim immediately placed the burden on the evidence. If Wall had left safely, someone should have seen her. Her phone should have moved, or she should have contacted her partner. None of that happened. Her known movements ended aboard the Nautilus. Police arrested Madsen and raised the submarine from the seabed. Technical teams then examined the ballast system, machinery, electronics, and damage caused by flooding. The technical examination indicated that the sinking had been deliberate. That finding gave Madsen's actions a clear purpose. He had tried to destroy the only closed space where Wall had last been seen alive. A deliberate sinking is not the action of someone trying to preserve evidence after an accident. It is the action of someone who needs the vessel to disappear before investigators can examine it. The submarine filled with seawater, but the attempt failed. Police recovered electronics and forensic material, including blood that matched Kim Wall. That blood directly disproved the claim that she had left the vessel safely. Investigators now knew she had been injured or killed inside the submarine. Police and maritime authorities began reconstructing the Nautilus's route through Køge Bay. The route mattered because Madsen had spent hours moving through open water before the vessel was found. Electronics recovered from the submarine, witness sightings, radio contact, and maritime data helped investigators narrow the areas where he could have thrown evidence overboard. Search teams used ships, aircraft, divers, sonar, shoreline patrols, and public sightings. They were looking for Wall, her clothing, phones, tools, bags, weights, and anything else Madsen might have thrown overboard. The operation required investigators to return to the same stretches of water repeatedly because currents could move evidence away from the submarine's original route. The search area was large. Evidence could sink, drift with currents, or become buried on the seabed. Madsen understood that and had chosen a disposal method designed to make recovery difficult. The search therefore became a contest between his attempt to spread evidence across the bay and the investigators' effort to rebuild one continuous route from many small findings. On August 21st, a cyclist found a female torso at the water's edge on southwestern Amager. It had no head, arms, or legs. 2 days later, Copenhagen police announced that DNA from the torso matched Kim Wall. Blood found aboard the Nautilus matched her as well. Metal had been attached to the torso. Police also reported deliberate injuries intended to let decomposition gases escape, reducing the chance that the remains would rise from the seabed. This was not a panicked attempt to place one body in the water. It was a planned effort to keep the remains hidden. The discovery forced Madsen to abandon his first story. He now admitted that Wall had died aboard the submarine and that he had put her body into the sea. He described the death as an accident involving the heavy hatch. He also described the disposal as a form of burial at sea. That language tried to make an organized concealment sound like an emotional reaction. But the body had been dismembered, weighted, and altered to prevent it from floating. Those steps required tools, time, knowledge, and repeated decisions. They were not one impulsive act made immediately after an unexpected accident. Forensic examination of the torso also found injuries that raised a separate issue. Police reported 14 stab lesions in and around the genital area. Prosecutors later charged Madsen with a serious sexual offense in addition to murder and indecent handling of a corpse. Madsen denied sexually assaulting Wall. He argued that the injuries had been made after death, but the prosecution said the injuries, tools, digital material, and planning showed that the murder had a sexual purpose. This evidence needed careful treatment. Violent videos or unusual sexual interests do not prove murder by themselves. Their value came from the way they matched other parts of the case. Investigators found violent material involving women being tortured and killed on devices connected to Madsen. The court also heard about searches made close to the voyage involving terms connected to beheading, girls, and pain. The prosecution did not ask the court to convict him because of what he watched. It argued that the timing and content supported the same conclusion as the prepared tools, Wall's injuries, the controlled location, and the disposal plan. Meanwhile, divers continued searching the bay. In early October, they recovered Wall's head, legs, clothing, and a knife in weighted bags. The recovery of her head destroyed the hatch story. Doctors found no major skull injury or fracture that matched Madsen's description of a heavy metal hatch crushing her head. He did not respond by admitting the truth. He replaced the story. In a new interview, Madsen claimed Wall had died from carbon monoxide poisoning inside the submarine while he was standing outside on deck. He also admitted for the first time that he had dismembered the body and thrown all of the parts into Køge Bay. The timing of this confession mattered. He admitted dismemberment only after divers had already recovered separated body parts that made continued denial impossible. The carbon monoxide account was designed to explain why Wall's head showed no hatch injury, but it had to survive technical testing. Experts examined the engine, exhaust system, valves, ventilation, pressure, and temperature inside the Nautilus. Certain exhaust conditions might have been technically possible, but Madsen's full account did not match the evidence. A possibility inside a technical model was not enough. The defense needed the court to believe that this exact accident happened on that night and explained everything Madsen did afterward. The court heard that the scenario he described would have created extreme heat inside the submarine. Investigators found no clear forensic proof that carbon monoxide had killed Wall. Even if some exhaust could have entered the vessel, that did not explain the sexualized injuries, the prepared materials, the deliberate sinking, or why Madsen had first invented two completely different stories. More importantly, the new account came from the same man whose first two stories had already failed. The court did not judge the gas story in isolation. It judged it alongside the blood, the sinking, the dismemberment, the weighted bags, and his repeated lies. Divers later recovered Wall's arms. One arm was held down with plastic ties and pieces of pipe, similar to the weighting found with her legs. A saw was also recovered near the route police believed the Nautilus had traveled. Investigators examined it in connection with the dismemberment. The remains and personal items had been separated and released in different locations. Metal pipes and other heavy objects were used to keep them on the seabed. This disposal method showed organization. Madsen did not simply push a body from the submarine. He divided the evidence, weighted it, moved through the bay, and released it in separate places. He expected distance, darkness, water, and decomposition to prevent police from reconstructing what he had done. The plan almost worked in one important way. Because the body had been dismembered and remained in the sea, forensic doctors could not determine the exact cause of death. They could not say with certainty whether Wall had been strangled, had her throat cut, or had been killed by another method. Madsen tried to turn that missing medical answer into his defense. If doctors could not name the exact cause, he argued the prosecution could not rule out an accident. But the reason doctors lacked a complete answer was obvious. Madsen had destroyed the body and the crime scene. The court had to decide whether he should benefit from uncertainty created by his own concealment. It decided that he should not. The prosecution built the murder case from the full chain of evidence. Wall entered the submarine alive. She never left it alive. Her blood was inside. Madsen deliberately sank the vessel, dismembered her, weighted the remains, scattered them, and lied repeatedly. The indictment said the murder had been planned and prepared. The exact method remained unknown, but prosecutors said it may have involved cutting Wall's throat or strangling her. They also listed tools and materials that they believed had been prepared for the crime, including a saw, knife, sharpened screwdrivers, straps, plastic ties, and metal pipes. Some of those objects could have ordinary workshop or maritime uses. That was the defense's point. A homemade submarine naturally contained equipment. The prosecution's point was that the objects could not be separated from the rest of the evidence. Similar materials were found with the remains, the body showed deliberate injuries, and the tools fit the disposal process. No single item proved premeditation. Together, the items supported a plan that began before the trip and continued through the disposal and sinking. This is how circumstantial evidence works in a strong case. Each fact answers a different question, and the combined pattern becomes far harder to explain as coincidence or panic. Madsen's behavior after the death was equally important. He did not report an accident. He did not call rescue services. He did not return Wall's body to shore. Instead, he spent hours cutting apart the body, adding weights, distributing the remains, flooding the scene, and creating a false story about dropping her off alive. He later described the dismemberment as a practical response to a large problem. That explanation revealed his approach more clearly than he intended. Kim Wall was not a problem to be divided into smaller parts. She was a person he had invited aboard for an interview, and every step he took afterward was designed to protect himself. Madsen's 3 accounts became one of the strongest parts of the case. First, Wall had safely left the submarine. Then, a hatch had killed her. Finally, exhaust gas had killed her while he was outside. He was not correcting small errors. He was replacing the entire cause of death whenever investigators found evidence that made the previous version impossible. The only facts he admitted consistently were the ones police had already proved. The defense was correct about one legal principle. Lying after a death does not automatically prove murder. A frightened person can panic, conceal a body, and tell terrible lies after an accident. But this case contained much more than lies. It contained evidence of preparation, sexualized injuries, violent digital material, deliberate sinking, systematic disposal, and 2 accident stories that failed when tested. The court also considered the location. Madsen had invited Wall into a vessel where he controlled the engine, hatch, route, and return. He had created a space with no witnesses and no easy exit. The privacy of the Nautilus was not incidental. It made the crime and the concealment possible. The trial began at Copenhagen City Court on March 8, 2018. Madsen admitted dismembering Wall and violating maritime safety rules, but denied murder and the sexual charge. By this stage, the dispute was no longer about whether he had handled the body. It was about whether the court believed his final accident story or the prosecution's claim that the entire voyage had been prepared as a crime. Prosecutors argued that he had planned the attack and used the interview to get Wall alone aboard the submarine. They did not need to prove every minute below deck. They needed to show that the accident explanation could not account for the tools, injuries, route, body disposal, sinking, digital evidence, and lies as one connected sequence. The defense argued that Wall had died accidentally from gas, and that the unknown medical cause created reasonable doubt. That was the strongest available defense because the dismemberment and disposal were already admitted. If the court accepted the gas story, the remaining conduct could be treated as concealment after an accident rather than murder. Forensic doctors, engineers, maritime experts, former collaborators, and other witnesses explained what the physical evidence could and could not establish. The trial was not built around one dramatic confession or one perfect DNA sample. It was built around many independent facts that pointed in the same direction. The court did not need every expert to agree on the precise killing method. It needed to decide whether any honest accident explanation could survive the complete evidence. The judges and jurors concluded that neither the hatch nor the gas account could explain the preparation, injuries, concealment, deliberate sinking, and changing statements together. A psychiatric assessment described Madsen as having narcissistic and psychopathic traits and as presenting a serious danger to others. That assessment affected sentencing, but it did not replace proof of the crime. The verdict had to rest on what he did before, during, and after Wall's death. On April 25, 2018, the court found Peter Madsen guilty of the premeditated murder of Kim Wall, aggravated sexual assault, indecent handling of her body, and serious violations of maritime safety law. The court rejected both accident stories. It found that the evidence, considered together, proved he had planned the attack and killed Wall aboard the Nautilus. Madsen received life imprisonment, the most severe ordinary sentence under Danish law. The submarine was ordered confiscated for destruction. He appealed the sentence rather than the finding that he had killed Wall. In September 2018, the Eastern High Court upheld the life term. The legal result was clear even though the medical cause of death was not. The court accepted that a murder can be proved through a complete chain of evidence when the offender has deliberately destroyed the body and crime scene. Otherwise, the person who damages evidence most successfully would gain the greatest legal advantage from doing so. In 2020, after years of calling Wall's death an accident, Madsen admitted in recorded documentary interviews that he had killed her. He did not provide a complete account of the killing, and the recordings did not solve the medical question the sea and dismemberment had made impossible to answer. The admission did not explain the exact method. It confirmed what the court had already concluded from the evidence 2 years earlier. A month later, Madsen escaped from Herstedvester prison after threatening staff and using objects that appeared to be a weapon and explosive belt. Police captured him less than a kilometer away within minutes. The escape did not change the murder case, but it repeated a familiar pattern. Madsen again tried to control a situation through planning, threats, and deception, and again failed once others could examine what he had done. He remains a life prisoner. The later confession ended his public claim that Wall had died accidentally, but it did not provide her family with a full account of the final minutes. Kim Wall's family and friends have repeatedly asked that she be remembered for her life and journalism, not only for the way Peter Madsen killed her. The Kim Wall Memorial Fund was created to support women journalists reporting on international and underreported stories. The fund continues to award grants in her name. Its purpose is practical: to help other reporters travel, investigate, and publish the kinds of stories Wall believed deserved attention. That work matters because the murder should not be turned into a warning that female journalists should avoid difficult assignments or unusual sources. Doing that would shift attention from the offender's planning to the victim's normal professional decision, and it would give the crime a second effect by making other women smaller and less visible. Wall accepted a professional interview with a public inventor who had welcomed media attention for years. The responsibility belongs to the man who used that access to isolate and kill her. The right question is not why she boarded the submarine. The right question is how Madsen used a respectable public image, a legitimate reporting opportunity, and complete control of a closed vessel to create a situation where only he could decide what happened. Madsen believed that cutting apart the body, attaching metal, scattering the remains across the bay, and sinking the submarine would prevent police from proving murder. It did not. Investigators recovered the submarine, the blood, the torso, the head, the limbs, the clothing, the knife, the saw, the weighted bags, the electronics, and the route he had traveled. Each recovery tested one of his claims. Each time the evidence contradicted him, he changed the story. The exact killing method remains unknown because Madsen worked to destroy that answer. It does not make the case mysterious, and it does not make the evidence weak. The evidence proved that Kim Wall entered the Nautilus alive, never returned to land, and was killed by the man who controlled the vessel. Madsen thought the sea would completely hide his crime. It did not. Investigators reconstructed the crime piece by piece. Each time they recovered another part of the evidence, Madsen had one fewer lie he could still use.